Fake Safety Podcast with Vance and Bart.
It's a trap, and there's no comfort fitting in a fake safety that no one believes in.
Welcome to our 75th, 74th
Yeah.
episode.
Sorry, I got sick.
What'd you get sick of?
Oh, well, Tom Woods told me this disease wasn't real, so I went out and licked a bunch of doorknobs. Ended up getting sick.
And this is why all of our episodes get removed from YouTube.
Thanks, Tom. No, for real. Yeah, I did. I ended up with the COVID. And, I got a whole family to take care of and whatnot and what have you. So, unfortunately, I had to ask my buddy Bart here to move some stuff around. And we do apologize for not trying to double up and whatnot. It was just really hard on us. Or at least on me this week. So I do appreciate everybody who, the patience and us getting out another episode. But I think we have a good one for you today, because we have something controversial happening on the presidential level and on the federal level that seems to be stirring up some emotions on the right and the left. And I think that has to do with some college forgiveness. So, not to hold anybody's hands through this, I don't want to, however you already have decided that you feel about this, but from a right point of view, I've heard these silly arguments like, oh, it's not my debt, fucker. And then from the left, I hear all these things about people getting out of college and not, looking for a job right now and they can't find one and they need money. And I don't hear anybody from the right going, oh, what's the market value of their degree? They don't argue it from that point of view. They go, oh, their degree's stupid. And it's women's studies. And they go, well, you shouldn't have got this dumb degree, and why do I got to pay for it? And there's a lot of merit to that. What the fuck? Women's studies is a stupid degree. All right, most people agree with that, but some don't, right? But the people who don't have market forces giving them indicators, because we have a system that forces banks or institutions to give them loans for all these different degrees. And we also have a school system, public school system, that's geared around shoveling people into this system. And it's telling everybody to go out and get their psychology degree or their pig farmer degree or their women's studies, or let's say good ones. It doesn't really matter what the degree it is. If it's not paying out what you're paying for it, it's a market force saying there's something wrong there.
Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. So I hear you on the market forces piece, but I would be careful that we not confuse correlation and causation.
Right.
Because, yes, plenty of things that are worthless only exist and continue to exist because they are subsidized, and often it sort of can lead to lower quality and can keep market forces out of balance. But it's not necessarily the case. whether you see value in it or not, I think the women's studies degree is a bit of a straw man. Anyway, that's such a minority of the population. Even the educated populace is.
Yeah, I only know 4
the
people
minority.
with that degree. I actually know 4 people with that degree. It's just like, sounded like a joke, but I actually know 4 people with the women's study thing. So, sorry. Go ahead.
But I mean, how many college educated people do you know? 400?
Yeah, I know a lot. And
Yeah.
all of them are professors. Everybody with that degree is a professor now, teaching it.
But again, you're still talking about the 1%. And I don't mean hashtag the 1%. I just literally mean 1% of the
Right.
educated populace. So
Yeah.
I just want to give it a fair shake and say that's a pretty hotly contested debate in terms of value. But I think the current administration, the previous administration, the right, the left, we all generally agree that like STEM fields are both good in inherent value, and for you dirty capitalists, it's good for
Right.
cash value as well. So,
But I would
Let's
have
just-
to also agree that most STEM fields are, at least in hiring in STEM fields, you tend to look for actual experience way more than college experience in those fields, typically, most of them.
it's a little chicken or the egg, and maybe not
Is it?
the.
Maybe
It is, because most folks are getting into these fields by way of like an internship and things like that. So
Yeah.
if you have someone who let's say
So if you could only get funding for your research through state stuff, then you get interns through state avenues.
yeah, that's just kind of besides the point. I think the point that I'm making here is that we could agree that these things are inherently valuable in some form. So let's just suppose
That's
that
true.
let's just suppose that an engineering degree is in fact worth $100,000. Now,
Okay.
again, I'm just trying to decouple
No,
this
go ahead.
idea that value and subsidy aren't always directly or inversely related. The idea
Okay.
that something that could be worth $100,000 could still be true and it be subsidized, right? So let's say you believe that this thing is worth a certain amount of money,
Uh-huh.
and you believe even those folks who can't afford that should still have the opportunity to get that.
And that would, under a free market point of view, be called an investor looking to get an investment back at a later time.
Well, and that's what the United States has done. The United States has decided democratically.
All right, Bart, I understand that you're trying to be a straw man here, but I do want the listeners to understand that Bart does not believe that the United States speaks for not only any one person, but any small group of people in any form or fashion. He understands that the idea of voting as a nation is pretty much fucking over most people in the world. And he is putting forth some sort of point of view that goes along with voting, but it is maybe more in line to his point of view. But he is not this stupid person.
Look, I am being a bit cheeky when I say democratically
Okay.
decided.
All
I
right.
think we all know that. But
I
the
hope
point
so.
the point I'm trying to make is that the intent here
Yeah.
is that we're trying to subsidize things that not everyone can afford, right? So
now what we have to decide is, why can't you afford that? Because you can't just go, oh, you should be able to afford that, because that's not necessarily true.
well, but you made the very valid point that part of this system relies on investors and investment. And
Right.
if we as a nation invest in education,
Okay.
and I
Invest means voluntary and interaction. So yeah, absolutely. Then I am on point at this moment. But if I'm forced to give you money to then put into something, then it doesn't matter whether you're right or not. It is immoral and evil.
but those are two different issues. So
But
the idea
they
that
are. You're right. You're right. They are two different issues. But the whole point to this is, what is the right thing to do for humanity? By your own admission at this point, you're saying to keep going down this path of democracy over what we would consider liberty, you have to throw out humanity. And what we're saying is, we are human and we want to thrive. We want to succeed. And we embrace, as liberty oriented people, we embrace the humanity of everybody.
but we have to take these things piece by piece. We're not talking about some binary of a world in which college education is subsidized or anarchy. I understand that that's the conversation we have quite often, but this is conflating many issues, and like the idea of voluntarism versus democracy versus whatever is not as crucial as us just talking about
It's
the
very
idea of like,
complicated, yeah.
right. But
Because these
if we're to
people were
narrow in-
manipulated into taking out these loans. That's something that the right doesn't seem to argue in their opposition to this loan forgiveness, so called, right? Is they're not taking into consideration the overwhelming manipulation that's gone into these people to get them to take out these loans, which is a gamble on their future. That's what a loan is. And it's such a young age. When we're saying that people can't decide whether they could vape at this age, but we could say they can get $200,000 in debt on a degree that nobody's ever shown to pay out unless you get a job teaching it. Absolutely stupid, right? But yet they're taught they could. I'm allowed as a big bank to prey on a person who will believe this, and if he or she can't pay it, the government will force the taxpayer to do it.
Yeah, it is predatory lending in that way. Like the idea that, what's the thing they always say about the drinking age? Like you can send somebody off to war, but you can't have a beer.
Right. Yeah.
Like, is that person old enough to make $100,000 decision? I don't know. By the time this episode comes out, inflation will mean that $100,000 isn't that much. But
Right.
right now, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
it's a big deal.
16-year-old
It's just-
shouldn't be in charge of that.
Or should they? I mean,
No.
In my opinion, it's if they were making that money and that decision unmanipulated, where it was truly a decision on whether they owed $100,000 or not, oh, this is a government backed loan, you can trust it, all this shit, right? If it was between a bank and a person, right? And the person had to be like, Yeah, I haven't had any real loans. I haven't shown that I can pay anything back, but I'm really smart. Here's my grades. Here's my GPA. Here's my school record. And I want to go to school for this. And a bank goes, yeah, he doesn't have any, but, most people who want to go to school for this, who have that GPA, who have that kind of record, tend to make a lot of money and be able to pay their shit back. But then the guy is like, oh, I want to women's studies and party, and I haven't decided whether I'm gay or straight, so like I'm gonna explore that shit while I'm there. They're like, well, we don't really want to pay for that. You can kind of do that on your own dollar. And then think about that. Like now, people who don't have really rich parents who send them off to Ivy League schools or state sponsored schools get to hook up with those gay kids at the gay bars that they get to go to. You don't have to be super rich or have rich parents. And there's Amsterdam Village in Atlanta. I don't know if you've been there, but I have. Good times, good times. I have good friends that would love to hook up with some almost college students.
But the predatory lending piece, well, it aligns with some of our earlier conversations around like abortion, because if you follow it all the way down, is a 16-year-old someone who should actually be in charge of their own life?
Maybe.
Are they their parents' liability? Are they who is responsible for
this?
A 16-year-old?
This is a very arbitrary discussion, and I think it should be treated as such. The best argument I've heard for like sex and stuff like that, your age and when age of consent and all that, is are you doing it for yourself? Are you relying on somebody else to live? Because you could be 16, have an apartment, and be doing your shit. Like I got me. I don't need y'all no more. But then you could be 30 and can't fucking make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So do I think like there's some sort of cutoff, right? That the 30-year-old has to like say his mommy and daddy can't be responsible anymore. But like, I don't think that 18 is like the right answer either, right? But I like the idea of somebody being able to take care of themselves. Like if you're gonna be under a certain age but want to be treated like an adult, I think you should have some sort of opportunity to do such. Like if you're fucking got your apartment and you're doing your shit, like I don't really see why anybody should be able to say otherwise.
Yeah, I used to be very strongly in the camp of when your brain is fully formed. So there's that like line around 23 to 25, which is I think what all the actuarial tables use to get all the insurance rates, which is why everybody's insurance goes down at that time. And obviously, from a number crunching perspective, that's about where it happens and people become responsible. But I think I'm, at least over the last decade or so, way more into the camp of your environment has a lot more to do with it than you might think. I think it's still the average probably correlates pretty strongly with the formation of your brain. But yeah, there are a ton of 30, 35-year-olds who just can't get it together. And I don't know, should we deny them loans?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's your money. I think that's how it should be. Like it's your fucking money. You know what I mean?
But is that predatory lending? Right? Like if you are a...
It isn't if you don't have a backer. If you don't have a guarantee payback. It can't be predatory lending if you could just be out the goddamn money. It's only predatory if like you have somebody who says, "Oh, they won't pay it. We'll pay it for you." Then you go, "Oh, well, then I'm gonna try and get every motherfucker that falls within this criteria to take this loan out because it doesn't fucking matter if they don't pay it back. I got the taxpayer that's going to do it anyway."
But that could just keep going, right? Because let's say you've got a 30-year-old who's unfit
Okay.
as a borrower.
Okay.
Their 60-year-old parents could be just as unfit and could co-sign.
Okay. And then you take out a loan, you loan them money, but they never pay it back. But then nobody pays you back because you don't have a government backed thing. So you go under for loaning them money. That's the thing that's missing. Nobody goes under for loaning the wrong people money because it's backed by the government. It's backed by the Fed.
Now, see, I don't know that that's necessarily true because let's talk about other forms of predatory lending that are quite successful without subsidy. Think about payday loans. Think about these cash today places. They typically target lower income, unbanked
people who haven't been shown to pay back money.
Right.
Right? But yet they are the only people who are willing to give them loans. So even though there's all these subsidies and all these things that pay back loans that people aren't paying back or whatever, these people still can't get a loan. But yet the free market has found a way to give them the money they need in the time they need it. And they are saying, like, yes, I understand the interest rate's high and whatever, but I need this loan and it's worth it to me to get it right now. And the free market has found a way to do that throughout all this bullshit.
But that's predatory lending. That is someone taking advantage of someone who is not.
All lending is somebody taking advantage of somebody else. That's the goddamn point. I have money. All real lending is people taking advantage of somebody else. All real big bank lending is absolutely I'm taking advantage of everybody all the time. But real lending is I am taking advantage because I have money right now and you don't. You need it more than I do. So I'm going to loan it to you for a fee.
So there are fees, and I know this is an arbitrary line as well. So we're kind of compounding reasonability here. But a reasonable fee, a reasonable interest rate or term, that is what the subsidy seeks. So the idea is that
but so
on their own,
what the subsidy seeks is what it actually does is makes it harder for people with bad credit to get a loan.
How do you figure that?
Because what you're doing is subsidizing loans, period, right? So if you fall into this criteria, right, then you pretty much are guaranteed a loan. And nobody's actually going to look into like what you're getting the loan for, whatever. It's just backed. So like everybody wants to go to the loan that's backed because even if you don't fucking pay it off, you still like the person loaning it gets their money back, right? So then there's not people out there actually looking at the people who they're loaning money to. Because there are people who've made mistakes in their lives who truly have either found a good idea or of whatever, and there's nobody looking at it because it's not a government-backed loan. It's just somebody with a good idea looking for a loan. It's like all those people who would be loaning out money because interest rates were natural at the time. So when interest rates are natural, they're typically higher, at least in today's market, which brings a lot more lenders into the system. Would be looking at what you're actually taking the loan out for, as opposed to what they do today was just look to see if it's backed by a state subsidy of some sort.
But
Which
that assumes
what that's what it does. Like that's why housing markets crash. That's why people buy houses they shouldn't buy, because it's subsidizing housing markets. So housing lenders are getting paid. And then people who want houses are going in debt for crazy amounts because houses are selling for crazy amounts of money because everybody can get a loan for them. As opposed to, if it wasn't that way, rental prices would be lower, housing prices would be lower because you'd have to have 20%. Interest rates would be different, they'd be higher, but the fact that housing would be lower would counteract that a little bit. And it would incentivize people who save to save because they would actually have 20% of the amount because it wouldn't be stupid to put money in a bank account.
So two things there. Primarily, I think you are
Wrong. Right. Wrongish right. Any of these ringing a bell? Nothing? No?
I think you are choosing the exceptions to kind of show how things could go wrong. But we talked about the same thing with like the justice system. I would much rather have a ton of guilty people roaming around than have an innocent man in jail.
Okay.
So, yeah, there are some idiots who are going to get 6 houses when they can't afford one. And yeah, there are some people who are going to get some worthless degrees.
Okay.
But on the whole, it's not all idiots. But the biggest piece, the second piece.
Good point.
But the second piece is we're discounting the investment. We're acting like this doesn't actually pay dividends in terms of a return on society, both in intrinsic value as well as cash value. Because
you are absolutely right. Because a state-sponsored school teaches state-sponsored things, and yet we have these motherfuckers looking for the state to answer every goddamn problem we have in life. And why is that? It's because every fucking thing we've ever learned in our lives has been sponsored and paid for by the state.
Okay, but follow me here. The investment, we've still discounted the investment. You haven't.
The investment's shit.
The investment isn't. Like,
it is shit.
I don't think
I
that's
mean, I don't know if you went to the same goddamn school I did, but I hid in trash cans and scared people, and I fucking learned. I was the smartest goddamn kid there.
That's anecdotal. On the whole, folks that are college educated tend to earn more. They tend to invest more.
I mean, I guess from old numbers, and then from whatever you would consider earning today, maybe that's right. I mean, earning and actually like getting paid are two different things. Like, getting paid in stolen money isn't earning.
I'd rather go the practical way than the like value judgment way.
I mean, it is a big deal, though. It is a big deal if you want to talk to like the advancement of society and humanity. It's a big deal.
But that's because you and I believe that state shouldn't be making those choices. And I think there are a lot of folks who agree with us. But for the folks who don't agree with us, it's the broken clock being right twice a day. Whether we think that the state is right or wrong, they have made an investment that will pay dividends for their society. They've paid to educate folks who cannot afford the education. And in doing that, they have created higher earners. And for anyone who's worried about inflation, you should know that all of those folks who have paid off their student loans or whoever else, they are likely heavily invested in the market, whether that be through their pensions, 401k, whatever. And any inflation that happens will affect the market as well. So at worst, they will have a net zero return. They won't actually have a loss. And we will have a more educated population for it.
Educated or indoctrinated?